In this video, I will demonstrate an exercise that I do all the time to self-correct my speaking patterns. Very often when we speak, we do not have the time to correct the way we speak at the moment of speaking, simply because we do not have time. We need to react to whatever people are telling us. We hurry to express our ideas and there is no time. However, if we want to improve our speaking skills, we do need to revisit our own speech. We do need to pay attention to our mistakes, and we want to change the speaking patterns that actually hinder our progress. So I will demonstrate the exercise that I do all the time, and I will be using my own video to correct my own mistakes. On Sunday, a few days ago, I posted a video that I filmed on the street. I was just walking and holding my phone in front of me, and I summarized the meeting that I had had previously with my students. When I watched that video, I noticed that I was in a rush, that I made a few mistakes, and that I didn't always complete my sentences the right way. I started a lot of sentences, I dropped them halfway, I didn't make myself clear, and I repeated myself many times. So I decided to improve that, and I will show you how it's done. The first thing I want you to hear and understand is that in order to correct your speaking patterns, it's actually more correct to say, in order to self-correct your speaking patterns, you need to use your own speech. You need to be using the video or the audio file with your own speech. This is why I'm using the video that I filmed, and it's a good idea, it's a good habit to be filming yourself and to record the way you talk. Otherwise you have no idea how you speak. So the first thing that I did, and I have a couple other videos that explain exactly the algorithm of how I work with my speaking mistakes and how I correct them. In this video I'll be just doing the exercise in real time together with you. So the first thing that I did is that I took a piece of paper and I watched the video and I wrote down the things that sound off to me. I wrote down the things that I do not like in my video. I made a few mistakes. For example, I said stories exchange. I looked it up and I didn't find anything close to that. I could feel already at the moment that it sounds off, but I couldn't find a better way of saying it at the moment of speaking. So I just, let it be. That was one thing that I didn't like. Then I noticed that I said, think about it this way a few times. And already at the moment of speaking, I was struggling with that phrase. I was looking for words and I couldn't find a better way of putting it. So again, I just let it be there. And I thought I would come back to it later. So I did. I didn't like that. And that's the first thing that I'm going to show you right now. So what I did is that I Googled exactly the phrase that I said, think about it this way. I found out that this is correct to say, but now I went to Youglish because I wanted to see how native speakers actually say this phrase. How do they pronounce it? And when they say it, do they use it in the same meaning that I was using it or not really? So here's what I found.
Funding. So just think about it this way. If we were to double the... And I think about it this way.
You can think about it this way too, right?
Pay attention to
Whereas
that.
people say, well, look, if you think about it this way and you look at it that way, then...
What I notice is that when people use this phrase, they stress the word this.
I really want to challenge you, and I want you to think about it this way.
I want you to think about it this way. They stress the word this.
Think about it this way proportionally.
Think about it this way proportionally.
100, yeah.
And so think about it this way.
Think about it this way. Think about it that way. So I noticed that they do stress the word this. Think about it this way. And when I was talking, my intonations were off. I didn't stress the right words. Another expression that I found and that I actually remembered is that we could say, think of it this way. Let's try to search for this word combination because it's also possible.
But think of it
and I wanted to see if there's any difference.
this way. Do you remember when
And think of it this way, people in this world are looking for a way out of
sewer. Think of it this way, sin is chasing us. Think of it this way, here's the solar system.
Psychokinesis or PK. Think of it this way. If
somebody could.
So I also noticed that people stress the word
I think of it this way.
this way. I think of it this way. And people use this phrase to introduce a concept or an idea. And they want people to look at this idea differently. So here's the first thing that I found, that I should stress the word this. Think of it this way. And I could say, think of it this way, or I think about it this way. And these are two slightly different expressions. So if I want to introduce an idea, I would say, think of it this way. Like, think of it in a slightly different way. Don't think of it the way you usually think of it this way. It's a different concept. Or I could say, I think about it this way. This is how I think about it. I think about it this way. Or I could also tell it to a person, think about it this way. So they are interchangeable, to be honest. But in my context, in the summary that I was giving about the meeting, I think of it this way would be a better choice. So I'm going to stick to that. Then stories exchange is not really the good word combination. It's not something that I want to use. So instead, I want to say it's an exchange of stories. We tell stories with a purpose to exchange stories. Okay. I found a few other things. I'm not going to bother you with that. I just showed you the basics. And what I really want to focus on now, when I'm going to do this exercise one more time, I'm going to do the summary one more time, and that's the only way to improve. You got to do it one more time, or a few more times if that's necessary. So when I do it one more time, what I want to focus on is I want to focus on completing my sentences. I want to focus on my inner state so that I do not look for words and I do not focus on looking for words. I focus on my voice and on being present here and now. So let's give it a shot. So let's do the summary one more time. And if I say something that I don't want to say, or something that doesn't look or sound good to me, that doesn't sound good to me, just as it happened right now, I'm going to stop and I'm going to start over, and that's okay, all right? I met with my students this afternoon and we practiced telling stories for business purposes. We told success stories and we told failure stories. By the way, if you also mispronounce this word, failure, here is a simple way to learn to say this word. You say the word fail and then you say the word you or your, and what you do next is that you connect these two words and you should say failure. I noticed that a lot of Russian speakers say the word failure, which is incorrect. You don't want to sound like that. It's failure, not failure, failure. This y sound needs to be heard in the word. I would like to share my personal takeaways from the meeting. I have two ideas that I would like to share with you. No, that's not what I'm going to say, actually. So let me start over. Let me formulate it one more time. Let me turn everything off that is distracting me, and I'm going to start over. I would like to share my takeaways from the meeting. I had two interesting insights. Number one is that we do not tell stories in business to gain something from people. We do not tell stories to get somebody's attention. We do not tell stories to sell a product. We do not tell stories to get people to buy our product. And we do not tell stories to gain somebody's trust or to force people into believing what we do or to force people into trusting us more. That's not the purpose of telling stories. The only purpose of telling stories in business is to hear a story in return. We tell stories because we want to exchange stories. That's a very normal human need, to be heard, to be understood. And exactly for this purpose, we share stories with people. If people hear a story that they can relate to, they will most likely share a story in return. When you tell your clients a story of your other clients, of how you solved a problem of your clients, they will most likely share a story too. A story of how some other company solved their problem, or a story of how they are disappointed with some other company's service or a story of a problem they used to have, right? Think of it this way. So I used the phrase correctly. Think of it this way. When salespeople practice storytelling with an intention to sell, their stories sound fake, they themselves look stiff, and they feel uncomfortable. When salespeople, and we mostly practice storytelling with sales teams and with founders and with the executive team of many companies, when people tell stories with an intention to hear a story in return, with an intention to connect, with an intention to build relationships with people, they sound completely different, and they're not putting any pressure on people. So that's takeaway number one. My second insight was the following. I formulated this insight. I know it's not what I want to say. It crystallized for me many, many years ago. And I'm very happy to see that people are getting this concept and people see the way to apply it in their everyday conversations. So the second takeaway is this. You want to start strong and you want to finish your story strong. When you start a story, you can skip the long and the boring introduction. You do not need an introduction to tell a story. You can start with a story. Just tell a story right away, because that's what people want. That's what people expect. A story always happened somewhere with someone. Some people were involved. A story always has a protagonist. It always has a setting. It happened in a certain place. And people, or one person who is the main protagonist in the story, they were doing something. So there is always some action. If your story has no verbs, it's a very weird story. So skip the introduction and start with the story right away. Jump into the story right away. But what is more important is that you want to formulate for yourself what the story is about. What's the lesson of the story? What's the moral of the story? What's the main idea of the story? If you have formulated for yourself, and if it's no longer than 10 sentences, if you can fit it in 10, if you can fit it in 10 words, not 10 sentences, if you can fit the main idea in 10 words, you are helping yourself a big deal. You can use this main idea to start your story. You can use it in the middle. You can use it to conclude your story. And to be, truth be told, if you want people to remember something, you need to say it at least 3 times. So if you have a clear sentence that explains your main idea, you can use it to explain it to people, and that will not sound like a boring repetition. It will be intended repetition, and you will use it to get your point across, not to bore people with the same sentence, which is repetitive and redundant. No, it's not going to sound like it's redundant. This is the work that you're doing for yourself. You're helping yourself. Let me give you an example. If you're starting a business presentation and you're telling a success story, you can start by saying, 2 years ago we did something, and that's already an interesting start. You're jumping directly into the story, but you can also start with an opening line, which is your main idea. You could say, we found a way to double our sales in the next quarter. That is actually the main idea of your story. You did it, you know how to do it, and you probably already did it if it's a success story. Or you could say, we found a way to launch our product on the North American market. Okay, interesting. Tell me more. Tell me exactly the strategy. Tell me exactly what you're planning to do, or tell me what exactly you're planning to do. That would be more correct to say. All right? So that's okay if you're speaking and at the moment of speaking you're noticing that you're not saying what you intended to say. Just correct yourself and start over. That's okay. Even native speakers, when you speak your first language, you make these types of mistakes. You say what you didn't want to say because your attention was somewhere else, or because you were just busy thinking about the next sentence, or there can be so many reasons why you didn't say what you wanted to say, and expecting a flawless speech from yourself is already meaningless or pointless. I would say it's a lot more productive to be able to listen to yourself, to be able to hear what you're saying, and to be able to self-correct yourself immediately. So when you start a presentation like this, when you start a story like this, or when you say, I want to tell you a story about how a company once doubled their sales in 2 months. That's an interesting start of a story. And you are actually telling me what the story is about right away. You're giving people a reason to listen. That works in 100% of the cases. I've seen so many presentations. I've prepared people to tell stories so many times, and I've told stories myself. So trust me, this works all the time. And what is good about this strategy is that you can use this line to finish your story as well. So you could say, so the lesson here is, or here is the moral of the story, or what I learned from the story is, or something along these lines. Here is what I personally learned from this story, or here is my personal takeaway from this story. It is possible to double the company's sales in 2 months' time. You just gotta work with the right people, or whatever your conclusion is. But that's what I mean. This is the most difficult part of storytelling. This is the most difficult piece of work, to craft this one-liner, to craft this sentence that summarizes the gist of the story, that summarizes the essence of the story. What is it? What is your story about? When you know it yourself, when you can verbalize it, when you can vocalize it, you feel very confident when it makes sense to you. And then you can share it with other people, and other people will also respond to this message. What you want at the beginning of your story, when you start telling your story, you want people to want to listen to your story. So you need to give them a reason to listen. That's my takeaway. And you want to finish your story strong as well. And this strategy is easy and effective because you're doing both. You're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Once you have crafted the sentence, this main idea, you can use it to start a story, you can use it to end a story, and you will not sound like you're repeating yourself. So I hope this makes sense. This video is a bit longer than the one that I filmed earlier because I was doing some self-correcting work. And now I can conclude that my examples were clearer. I corrected my mistakes. I tried to focus on finishing my sentences and signaling with my intonation that that's the end of the sentence. And overall, I feel a lot better about this presentation because I felt more calm, and I have a feeling that I managed to communicate the essence of my ideas, and I think this summary works a lot better. Let me know in the comments if you could understand this summary better or worse than the one that I shared on Sunday.